It's been about 12 years since I got my first table saw, a job site style saw, very similar to this one. And in that time I've learned loads of tips and tricks that I'd like to share with you in this video. Let's start with setup. Setting up a saw to cut accurately is obviously important, but something which I think is often missed is the order in which it should be done for the best results. This is a brand new saw just out of the box, so let's get it set up. Because miter slots are fixed and because they're often used for running jigs like miter gauges, crosscut sleds, things like that, the very first thing I'd recommend doing is setting the distance from one of the teeth on whatever blade you have fitted to the miter slot level with the back of the blade, then rotate that tooth to the front and check there, referencing from the same tooth. You want those measurements to be identical so that everything runs nice and true. Depending on the saw that you have, that means you're either going to be shifting the cast iron top very slightly, moving the trunnions underneath, or tweaking internal adjustment screws to move the motor like on this job site saw. At this point it's important to check your riving knife alignment to make sure that the material that you're cutting isn't going to snag on it on the way through. Next you want to set your fence to your slots, again at the front and the back, and it's a good idea to set the fence so that it drifts away by a fraction of a millimetre at the back, just to make sure there's no chance of the wood binding between the fence and the blade on the way through. Then you can check your fence is square to the table. And once that's done, you can calibrate your blade angle stops. I'd recommend using a digital angle finder to do that, but you can also use a reliable square. Then calibrate your miter gauge square to the blade. Set the height of your throat plate so that material doesn't get snagged at the front. And finally, calibrate your measurement marker for the fence. I like to do that by carefully setting it at a specific distance, making a cut, and from there you can tweak it accordingly. In a situation where you have a warped board like this one and all you have available is a table saw, running it against a standard fence is very risky because it can pivot mid-cut and bind against the blade. One of my favourite methods is to take a piece of sheet material. This is a scrap of 18mm MDF. I want to check that the edges are perfectly straight, and they are, and then I'll set my table saw fence just to cut the thickness of the blade's kerf, so 2 or 3 millimetres. I'll make a cut about 3/4 of the length of the board, hold it down still, firmly to the table, and power off the saw. Wait for the blade to come to a complete stop. Now I can flip the board lengthways, feed it in through the back, and then reference the kerf cut against the riving knife and clamp it down to the table. Now I can run the concave side of the warped board against the MDF edge, and I might need to do that a couple of times depending on how much warp is in the board. But it'll give me a perfectly straight edge, much like a planer, or jointer as they call it in the US, would do. It's important that the board that you use for this is long enough that the two end points on the concave side keep the board tracking in a straight line past the blade. Now I can run that newly straightened edge against the fence to cut the opposite edge. And I now have two perfectly straight parallel edges on this board. I've prepared another warped board just to show you an alternative method, and again I'll use a scrap of MDF, and I'm just going to align the material that I want to cut away with the edge of this MDF board. You'll need a method to hold it down to the board securely, and for that I'm just going to use a couple of screws in the end of the board, because often when I make rip cuts I'll end up cutting the workpiece to length afterwards. But in a situation where you don't want to add holes to the board, you could use one of these hold down clamps that simply screw to the board. Now I'll set the fence so that I can sandwich that MDF board between the fence and the blade, lock it down, and I'm ready to make the cut. And now once again I have a perfectly straight edge I can run against my fence. So if you don't have a planer available, these methods work great. Say that I want to make multiple narrow rip cuts to this block of oak, so for making edge banding or something like that. Using your table saw fence to cut those in the usual way is very unsafe. Also the crown guard is going to get in the way of your push sticks, and even if you remove the crown guard, which is not something that I would recommend, it's still not going to feel safe making those cuts. Before I do this, I'm going to swap out the throat plate for a zero clearance insert because I don't want to lose those narrow rip cuts down inside the saw. These zero insert plates are available to buy for this saw. If you've got a featherboard like this one, you can set up the back of it to the distance you want from the blade, and then I'm going to slide it forward so that it's ahead of the blade. Now my distance for the narrow rip is set, and I can butt my board up to it, lock the fence down, and make repeatable cuts, moving the fence each time to give me consistent narrow rips. My favourite jig for this though is this solid anodised aluminium one, which works in the same way. It locks down into your mitre slot. It has a ball bearing runner to guide the wood past it, and I think I paid like £18 for that. A real bargain if you're going to be making cuts like this regularly. There are also some great handmade versions of this jig. My favourite is by Tamar at 3x3 Custom. It features a bolt for fine adjustments. When making rip cuts, you should always use a fence so that your workpiece is properly supported. However, there are situations where you might want to cut a slightly different angle. For example, I cut a lot of tapered legs. I have two pieces of beech here cut to an identical size, and let's say I want to cut a taper like that to both workpieces. Using the same MDF board that I used earlier for straightening the warped edge, I can just align my pencil line to the edge of this board, and then I'm just going to screw on some plywood scraps. They're just going to help me position the next workpieces, and I'll add some of these hold down clamps just so that I can keep my hands a safe distance away from the blade. If I wanted to cut a long board like this, roughly in half, running it up against the fence like this is a very bad idea. Never push a board sideways against the fence if the edge against the fence is shorter than the edge that you're feeding into the blade. If I was to make the cut using the fence like this, the wood is going to want to twist, bind with the blade and potentially kick back at me. So you always want to use something to support your work. That could be a mitre gauge like this, a cross-cut sled or a panel sled, which are great for cutting wider boards. As you can see, this has a fence at the back rather than the front, allowing you to cut basically as far as your arms can reach. You'll find hundreds of different designs for crosscut sleds on YouTube, many of which claim to be the ultimate, often with built-in accessories like T-tracks, stop blocks, hold downs, extension arms. My own jigs tend to be pretty basic because I just prefer to spend my time making projects rather than jigs. There is another way to safely make crosscuts though, especially on a table saw like this, because if I pull down this pin, you'll see it has a sliding table, which is a brilliant feature and can be used in conjunction with the mitre gauge. Throughout this video, I've been using the Evolution R255 TBL Plus. And you might remember a couple of years ago, I made a video testing and comparing this to one of its competitors. In that video, this table saw performed incredibly well for me, whereas its competitor left a lot to be desired. That video wasn't a sponsored video, but Evolution are sponsoring this video. There's a reason why this saw is a bestseller and why it's out of stock pretty often. And I believe that reason is this represents the best value for money that can be found at this price point. This saw currently retails at just £379 or $450 with the stand included, which is a great addition. It not only has all the features that you would expect to find in a more expensive saw, like a soft start motor, built-in Outfeed support, removable riving knife, NVR switch, onboard storage for all of the accessories, and good build quality. But for me, that sliding table, which works great and opens up so much more flexibility with the cuts that you can make, is the cherry on top. And as if that wasn't enough, Evolution's multi-material blade technology means that with the right blade, you can also cut other materials like steel, aluminium, and plastic. I'll leave a link in the description, and if you use my promo code RAGANDBONE, you'll get a free general purpose wood blade plus one other free accessory of your choice. Thanks to Evolution for supporting this video, and now let's take a look at Outfeed. Let's pretend I'm working on a job site and I don't have the luxury of having this Outfeed support table. Let's also pretend that I'm using a table saw that doesn't have built-in Outfeed support, but I need to make a rip cut to a long board like this one, measuring about 7 feet or just over 2 meters. I start making that cut, but as soon as most of the board starts overhanging at the back, the front wants to tip upwards towards me, which is obviously dangerous. So what I'm going to do is what I call a rip, flip, rip. And the safest way to do this, when I feel the weight of the board wanting to tip, I'll hold it down still firmly onto the table and power off the saw, wait for the blade to come to a complete stop, and then pull the board back out. I can then flip it lengthways 180 degrees and then start the rip cut from the other end of the board, and from there I can complete that rip. I have two pieces of painted pine here, both the same dimensions, and let's say I want to cut a half lap to join these at a 90-degree angle like this. So I want to find the center here so that I can set my blade height accordingly, and here's a better method for finding that exact center without doing any measuring. I'm going to add a block to the fence ahead of the blade, and that's going to be my stop block so that when I advance the workpiece, it won't snag between the blade and the fence. Now I'll cut a 45 to the end, flip the board and make that same cut again. And that's going to give me a perfect center point, which I can then use to set the blade height. In order to make these next cuts, I'll need to swap the riving knife to a low profile one. This is another accessory that is available to buy, and it allows you to make through cuts for situations like this where you don't want to cut all of the way through a board. There are a few different shapes and designs of push sticks, and my advice would always be to use which one makes you feel safest. We all have to take responsibility for our own safety. But personally, my favourite is this type here, for a few reasons. When using this type of push stick, my hand is in a position where I can put all of my body weight behind it. I can also feel what's going on with the wood as I'm cutting. So if there's any vibration or any signs of the wood binding under the cut, I can safely hold it down firmly and power off the saw. Whereas with this type of push stick, I feel less connected to the workpiece and I just don't feel like I've got as much control. Because it's got quite a long front, it's also better at holding the workpiece down flat to the table while making the cut. I actually do use both types though, so sometimes I'll use this one to feed the board through and this one to hold the material tight to the fence. These ones also come in useful if I'm cutting something smaller and more intricate because I can keep my hands further away from the blade. One thing to note with this style of push stick though is that you should always make them from plywood, because if you were to make this from solid wood and the grain is running in that direction, you're going to have a really weak point at the handle here and that could snap while making a cut, which is really dangerous. Regardless of which push stick you choose though, where you position it is important. A common mistake I see is to push it over here. I guess people think this is safer because your hand is further away from the blade. The trouble with that though is that you're applying a twisting motion of the workpiece into the blade, and even with a riving knife fitted that can be really dangerous. So what you want to do is position your push stick closer to the blade than the fence, but apply a diagonal force so that you're pushing the workpiece into the fence. If anything was to go wrong while you're making the cut, your hand is going to move in this direction away from the blade. I have a piece of hardboard here. This is only about 3 or 4 millimeters thick. One problem you can encounter is that the material slips under the fence, which is potentially dangerous, but also you're going to get a bad wonky cut. Funnily enough, on this fence it doesn't seem to be an issue, whereas on my cabinet saw you'll see that it is an issue, and one that has caused me problems before. So it's a good idea to make a sacrificial fence and secure it to your main fence so that it closes up that gap, but it still moves freely. If you've got one of these guide rail style clamps, you can do this just by drilling a hole in the edge. If you don't have any clamps like that, a great trick is to use a standard U-bolt, cut some of it away, add a simple wooden washer, and use either a nut or a wing nut to secure it to the fence. I've got a number of jigs and sleds down here by my main table saw, and the one that I use the most is my miter gauge. I bought this when I got rid of my miter saw from the workshop, and I haven't looked back. This is a high quality and reasonably expensive miter gauge with incremental angle stops and excellent build quality. For me, it's been well worth the investment. The next most used is definitely my panel sled, which I mentioned earlier. Personally, I use this more than a crosscut sled. This here is my crosscut sled. You can see by the amount of dust on it that it doesn't get a lot of use, and I've actually used this for 45-degree cuts in the past too, so it no longer has a zero clearance at 90 degrees, but I never really used it for that anyway. This one here is my finger joint jig. I've got a video about how I made this. It works incredibly well and gives me perfect finger joints when I need them. There is this one. This is a frame spline jig, and it actually rides along my table saw fence. This allows me to cut a spline groove to reinforce a 90-degree join. Then I can add splines, which will add extra glue surface and reinforce those joints. Finally, my upright jig. This one is used for positioning workpieces in vertically. This is great for when I want to cut something like a bridle joint or a half lap joint on a wide workpiece. And as I mentioned earlier, all of my sleds and jigs are pretty crude and rough looking, but they work for me. I've got a separate video about the blades that I like to use at the table saw, but generally I tend to always have a rip blade fitted with about 24 teeth. I find the cut quality I get from a rip blade is pretty much good enough for crosscuts as well. I used to use a lot of combi blades like this 40 tooth one, but yeah, recently I've just been liking the ripping blades for that faster feed rate. And it just means I spend less time swapping out blades, which on my main saw is pretty annoying because you need so many tools and also it's a fiddly job. Obviously I don't get quite as good cut quality, but that's a compromise that I'm often happy to make. If I want a finer cut, I'll upgrade to something like this 60 tooth blade, and I regularly use this, my 6mm flat tooth grooving blade, for cutting things like housing grooves, finger joints and splines too. By this point in the video, you'll probably understand why the table saw is by far the most used tool in my workshop. I hope you found the video useful and thank you for watching.